What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? How you all doing? We got another exciting fireside chat with the one and only Cliff Crawley, co-owner of Cobit Labs, and obviously developer of your favorite Lost Relics game. How you doing, Cliff? How's things going for you?
Hey Striker, yeah, good, thanks. Hey everyone.
I'm ex-
Yeah, just been busy with with this patch. Obviously, it's probably the longest time that we've had without a patch in between. So yeah,
Yeah, I got a
what's
chance
going on?
to like look through, just in preparing for talking really quick. I was like, okay, let's go look at the website and go look through all the patches, and go look through all the notes that you have on the website in there. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, it's been a good little amount of time. I was telling other players too, obviously, that I was like, I really have no clue what's coming because of the fact that it's. I mean, you've obviously been building for the past few months now. Obviously, while Halloween and Christmas is going, right? Is there any ideas you can give us about what, in general, are your current goals? Let's say for, the short term or like for 1 year's worth of time. It doesn't need to be specifics on implementing certain items, but like if you have any type of ideas about goals and what your plans are, let's say over the next year.
I think probably the biggest there is going to be co-op. There's been some technologies that I've been waiting to mature before I can use it, and that sort of allows me to take a few shortcuts and do a much better experience for everyone when doing co-op or any kind of multiplayer. So I mean, that's going to be huge. There's some groundwork and some few changes that need to be done in order to support that system with the way that it works. So I'm kind of laying some of the groundwork for that. There'll be some more that needs to get done for the patch after this one. Um, but yeah, I'd say multiplayer is probably the big one. But then, I mean, there's just more content coming as well.
Sure.
So it's gonna really expand what you can do, the day-to-day activities you can do, um, and yeah, it should just give some more depth that people have been asking for.
Okay. I mean, well, you hit the nail on the head there. I would say definitely the question that I wish I had brought up last time was the idea about co-op, because I think you had mentioned when we were talking with Spizzo about the idea of co-op arena, and there's been a little bit of a guessing game going on by all the players, obviously, about what that could mean. I threw out my 2 cents, and I was like, hey, co-op probably means obviously cooperative play rather than competitive play. And then arena, I had just guessed that it was going to be something like waves of enemies. But we've had a whole bunch of ideas there thrown out by different people. PvP versus 1v1 versus all this stuff. What would you say the definition of co-op arena? Do you think co-op arena is the adequate descriptor of what this new thing could be?
Yeah, I mean, tell me some other guesses that people have had.
So I think the biggest guess right now is probably 1v1. It would be two people go into like arena, as in gladiator style, like you enter the Coliseum and only one gladiator walks out, kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
that would probably be number one as the number one
What do you mean
guess.
by one v one
That it would probably be,
against each other?
yeah, against each other. And I was like, well, that kind of goes against the idea of co-op. Why do we use the word
Yeah.
co-op, right? But that's why I had said that no, I don't think we're going to be fighting each other. I think we're going to be fighting with each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
co-op does. Yeah, it is talking about cooperative play. So
Sweet, sweet.
take that into account.
Very cool.
So
And
probably not so good. Not that one might not be so well aligned. That idea.
okay, okay, I got you. Would you say, let's see, I know you were saying right here about your plans about multiplayer over the course of this coming year, over the course of 2022. Obviously, we have a lot of other changes coming too, right? Efinity info is probably going to be dropping, hopefully in the next month from Engine, maybe a little bit longer. Would you guess, and it's a guess because there's no way to know until that comes out, but would you say that over the course of the year, you expect to do an equal amount of let's say gameplay develop versus blockchain development, like implementation in terms of the
Yeah.
workload?
So I guess the last couple of months of because of the engine ecosystem kind of like spinning up for Efinity, and because there hasn't really been too much else going on in a blockchain space, and I haven't had to deal with gas fees and all that kind of thing since we're all off chain. Um, the things that I have been working on are more gameplay related.
Okay.
So this next patch will have a chunk of all that. As you said, I still don't know what's going to happen with Efinity. I haven't had any more information anywhere about that. Um, so we're kind of just sitting out and waiting to see what will happen. Um, Ideally, I want to get this patch out before any of that stuff happens. As far as I know, the way things have been going with Engine, I assume they're not going to just drop it, drop something and we'll all immediately be able to do
Sure.
like use Efinity. Um, so I think there's still a bit of time there before the items will be available on Efinity.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um, so yeah.
I had talked to a few different people about what can we expect, or what can we as players like be anticipating to occur, not just in terms of the game, but like with Engine and with Efinity specifically. And some of the things I had brought up is like, well, look, the closest comparison is how JumpNet got rolled out. It's not a one for one, but it is an idea here to take a look at. And as I was going through again the updates that you've made with Lost Relics and with Engine, there was a very clear announcement window, of JumpNet being announced around March of 2021. Then announcements again from you, Cliff, and with Lost Relics like 1 month later. And then leading to, it was like pretty much 1 month after another. Followed by an Engine update, followed by a Lost Relics update, and by the time we knew it, information that came out in March, we started to actually see be put into place with the Blockchain Emporium in July. I'm sure that was a heavy workload for you to take on. I mean, you kind of had to. I'm sure you had to do it, off the cuff there. Just going through that process in the past, could you talk a little bit about that experience, what it was like, what the difficulties were, or what the positives were, and how it ended up coming out in the end, from your perspective?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I really need time to interrogate what is happening in that platform. So once it's released and the documentation's there, I can start doing test runs and trying things. I need to make sure that certain features work that I want to make use of, and yeah, it kind of depends on what I'm doing at the moment in the game too. The thing with like, I mean, I don't think there's a huge rush right now to that we all have to dive into Efinity.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's taken so long for them to release anyway. If it was tomorrow, if I was to be able to create the items on Efinity, I don't really feel it changes too much for Lost Relics,
Okay, gotcha.
because like you can do everything can be done in the marketplace right now, or like full trading and everything.
Hmm.
So the only thing really that we don't have is that it's on the blockchain with records. Um, and that's like, depends. Like if that's the be all and end all for you, then obviously we haven't done that for the last couple of months.
Hmm.
What is it now? Probably close to 6 to 8 months or something, because of Ethereum gas fees. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, um, definitely want to go that way and investigate it to see if that's going to be where we're going to go. Otherwise, we're going to move to another blockchain. Either or, I'm not sure. There's just so many unknowns with it. The same with all the old items.
Hmm.
Um, like right now, like as far as I know, their rollouts are normally like they release a version that has quite minimal features, and then they say we're going to add more features later. I assume the same thing's going to happen with Efinity. At the very least, you'll probably be able to mint items. Um, I assume that you wouldn't be able to mint items with um, engine backing. Like as in that'll be a feature you won't be able to, you can choose not to,
Hmm.
because otherwise they wouldn't be able to pull items across,
Sure.
from different chains and other things because they don't have any engine in them. So I mean, if I was to do it myself, that's probably what I would do, is to release the first version so that you could mint items without any engine backing,
Yeah, that
because that
makes a
would
lot of
allow them
sense.
to, well, someone can be working on the bridge to bring items across, and someone can then be adding on the feature um, to create items with engine backing.
Gotcha.
And then that engine backing ties into things like staking and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's probably what I would do. It just depends on how far down that road they're going to release or not. So if we were to go over as soon as they released it, I imagine I would be able to recreate the items. The bridge most likely won't be up and running, so I can't move them across. So we could recreate items. They probably wouldn't have any engine backing. I don't know. Um, Maybe we have a way to add engine backing like post creation.
Hmm.
I, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like, there's so many unknowns.
a
Like
lot of
until
different
any of that's
possibilities.
released, yeah, I can't really plan very well for it. I can just kind of guess.
Gotcha.
So I mean, I think for right now, like I can still create items. I can still set supplies. All of the code is written for all of that. Like I basically reproduced blockchain, except for off chain. So it's just a single entity that's doing all of the um, accounting and stuff for it.
Yeah, that's a
So
really good point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I just so saying like there's no huge rush that we have to go over to Efinity,
Gotcha.
especially if it's not ready. Like if it's not ready and they're like, yeah, it's ready, go ahead, and you can only do one thing or we can't do all the features. Is it really a good idea to jump across now? And then we've kind of got items on mainnet, items on Efinity, items off chain anyway because there's some features missing or something.
I
Um,
gotcha.
I don't know. Just
I'm
being cautious, I guess.
I mean, rightfully so. I think also you kind of hit on the next question and the next topic because I've been hearing a lot of different discussion from different blockchain games or that are planning on releasing in the future or releasing in the near term. And there's always this big discussion about on chain versus off chain, right? And we have, if you look at it from like a traditional video game industry look. Obviously it's all off chain, right? And there's a lot of benefits to that. The fact that as developers, you're in control of the creation process. You're in control of how you want to be able to use that. There is a sense of control that you lose when you go on chain, but then you also get some added benefits. The idea of being able to have that information available to all users. The idea about being able to receive fees that are related to the smart contract. What do you think? I mean, we're going to be seeing a lot of different companies come out with their different solutions about whether it's on or off chain. Where do you think that's all going, or how would you? What would you assume the industry in the future would tackle that problem?
Well, I mean, the problem would be um, while ownership is really great for players, then because you have this item,
Hmm.
as the game developer or the game, I can't revoke that item easily. So if there's a gameplay mechanic, such as you dying and you're losing your items, I can't revoke those items if they're in your wallet unless you approve it.
Hmm.
So you almost like have to agree to approve a transaction at the start to say, yes, if I die, I'll lose my items and that kind of thing. Like it's just uh, a bit odd and bit like you need to do a lot of hoop jumping as a developer to try and make that kind of a system work. And it's a standard thing. Like it's, um, in the game you might do something and it converts that item into something else, or um, it might be a temporary item that I want to give everyone for a temporary time limit and then take it back again at the
Hmm.
end.
Hmm.
Because otherwise it has repercussions, like people will be trading it and selling it to each other long after the event or whatever it is over. Don't really want that to happen. I just want it to happen for that short period of time. Otherwise, people might be buying items that have no use. There's a bunch of arguments for and against it and that kind of thing. Um, with Ethereum and the way it was working at the current time, that made it very difficult. But there's been other blockchains like EOS and now Efinity, which have discrete accounts. And so that allows the game to create a blockchain account or wallet for your game account. The game stays in full control of that, like at the start. And then the system can allow a user to either take control of that discrete account or um, maybe the game keeps control of that and simply sends items from that wallet out to the user wallet later on or something.
What do
Like
you?
there's several ways to solve it because doing it that way, having a wallet like that, means that theoretically I could convert all virtual items to blockchain items and just not allow those to be withdrawn. So then you can see the full economy and breadth and everything
Ah, I see.
publicly on the blockchain, but it's secured in player wallets. And then because the game has essentially the keys in order to send items, or the authorization to send items or to move items in and out of those wallets, it means you have the full visibility of it. So you can see that an item moved out and went to this person or did this. Um, but there's control there where you can choose, I don't want to have players send this item to their wallet. Like there's literally no reason for them to do that
Mhm.
because they can see it and use it in their current wallet. They also won't accidentally lose their private keys and lose access to that item.
Exactly.
Um, and it can be revoked, and all sorts of other fluidity stuff can be added to it.
Yeah. Do you think that? I mean, I know. I mean, that kind of goes to the. I had played around with the same type of idea of like, what would a world where Lost Relics is completely every item on chain? I mean, granted, there's other games, I guess, that you could say that are trying to pull that off, but like that in itself adds all this exactly the same complexity you were saying right now. What do you do if people lose their keys? What do you do if it leaves the game world? All these things. Um, you know, or even just within the game, the function, like if, for example, if Cole was to be an NFT, but was able to leave the game's wallet, I mean, there could be a point in time where all of a sudden we won't have enough Cole to circulate and increase progression, right? Like, but that's a really good point, the way you were saying right now, by, hey, maybe there will be some items that are only allowed to ever be within the game and not to be withdrawn.
Yeah, I mean that's one way that I've been thinking of potentially solving it. Like everything would end up being a blockchain item. Um, the difficulty as well with that in the past on the existing engines ecosystem is that you have to back every item with engine. So for me to add thousands and thousands of virtual items, essentially the items now coal and all that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
I have to I have to put money into them in
Right.
order to create them. But if I don't have to do that anymore, then it's a lot cheaper and I just have to pay the transaction costs. I don't have to actually put anything into them,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it a lot more viable for me to be able to make any item into blockchain items. And I mean, you've been able to do that with NFTs like apes and all that kind of thing. No one backs those as anything. They're
Right.
just simply created.
Yeah, the value is
So
derived from something else.
yeah, I mean, so almost they've kind of been at an advantage economically or financially from whoever created them. They're just paying the minting fees or the gas fees,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not backing them with anything. And people aren't looking then at the backing of those items to say there's a certain value in them either. That was a kind of a weird thing to begin with, at the very start. Sort of saying stop looking at the backing value. That's not the worth of the item. It's the utility and other things too.
Yeah.
And this is like 3 years ago, and only this year or last year has anyone sort of started questioning, oh, do these profile pictures actually have any value?
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
utility. And I'm like, well, yeah, I said that like 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I remember. I mean, I remember 3 years ago, like looking at the same problems and trying to understand what the valuation on these things can be. And I came across, like, for me, it just looked like three different interpretations of what like the definition of value can be. Right? Engine wanted there to be staked, to be a value staked, to give it an inherent value. The ERC 721 did not go that route. So just three different solutions to the same problem, and it looks like in this case, at least on Ethereum, that the 721 standard was the one that got mostly adopted. Then you see the things like OpenSea, taking that to the next level, and things progress. And it's not until we look back and then we realize, well, you know what? I mean, that was a good idea when no one was actually trying it. Now that the community has kind of spoken, it looks like, okay, here are the things they value more than others, which we wouldn't have known before, right? Unless you actually go through the process. Um, I know you
Yeah,
had. Go for it.
I was just going to say the ERC 1155 standard as well, outside of the engine ecosystem, like they released the standard. I'm pretty sure everyone else removed that reliance on any kind of backing anyway.
I
So they
see.
modified it slightly and removed it, and no one creates items with any backing.
Hmm.
So again, engine ecosystem was at a bit of a disadvantage there, and then probably also misleading people with making them think that the entire value of an item comes only from the backing.
Hmm. Exactly.
I don't know. I never sort of followed that whole thing. I tried to lead people away from actually thinking that the entire value of an item is simply with its backing.
Yeah. No,
Which,
I get where
I
you're
mean, I
coming from.
understand why you do it, but at the same time, like making coal and backing it with thousands and thousands of engine, like doesn't
Doesn't
make
make too much
sense.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I know, obviously, we've had progressions with blockchain items in the game in Lost Relics. Um, over the course of 3 years, over the course of development, and with all the changes that you've made, we've come across different situations where we've come up where new updates have introduced the ideas of like the changes in terms of I think how you interpret what loot should be dropping, when it should be dropping, how often it should be dropping, all these different ideas. You know, when one of the situations, right, was when we had a massive onboarding of players all at the same time. You know, obviously the concern at that moment was, hey, the drop pool could run out. You know, we don't know how many players are going to come into the game, so obviously changes need to be made, needed to be made. And then that's played out multiple times over the course of the past few years. How have your thoughts changed over 3 years of development with the idea of the loot pool? You know, with the idea of some blockchain items being from production skills versus RNG drops versus chests. How would you describe how your thoughts have changed over the course of time?
Well, I think originally I was just focused on, dropping these blockchain items, and you'd open up a chest and you get a blockchain item. Awesome, done. And so everyone just focused on that. And if you weren't getting blockchain items, suddenly it was the worst thing in the world. Um, the thing with that is they're all limited, right? It's not like there was any kind of player work or player um, resources or something that was put in order to have those come out. And so that kind of leads into, oh, well, maybe we could do it as a player created thing. So you could create blockchains as a player. Maybe you gather all these resources, you combine all these things, and you craft something, right?
Right.
That's another way to do it. Uh, I mean, sure, I could do that way, but I don't feel that it's going to have long-term value, especially if you have um, a bunch of players who are just constantly pumping that stuff out. All it's going to do is flood the market with it, and then it's not really valuable anymore. Um, it's kind of interesting, the idea of having some items be created by certain people, and you can see that, and you can retrade and resell and that kind of thing. So there is some changes coming around that. So pets, for example, will give an opportunity for that,
Okay.
but not at this stage. Weapons, um, that will. There's some work being done there. I'm discussing things with Corey about it, and we're looking at doing that for weapons too, but not like weapons from um, in the same way that you craft them at the moment. So
Gotcha.
yeah, there's some experimentation around that sort of stuff that we're still kind of doing. I don't want to do the same thing where I'm just creating items for the sake of creating items, and then or having some certain people create unlimited items or something for the sake of it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Um,
I'm guessing when you mention like the idea of pets here, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong in understanding. I think you mean like that there, other than the actual pet, there's additional information that can go along with that pet. Whether it's like this pet was trained by Striker, or this pet accomplished X goal or X objective, or whatever. Is that what you mean by
yeah,
extra information?
yeah. I mean, I haven't given too much details on it or anything or how it's going to work, but um, just maybe, like I've said, progressing your pets. So maybe leveling them up, but you might level them up in a different way to someone else. Um, and you can, choose to resell that pet later on once you've leveled it up to a certain um, level and given it certain properties, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that's kind of cool. I don't know if I should do that with weapons. Like I've created all these weapons previously, right?
Hmm.
It's like if I wanted to do it again, I'd have to go back in time and change how that was done, maybe, rather than giving all these weapons out. You could do what some games are looking to do now and just allow players to be the ones that create all the weapons in the game. But that has its own issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there's some changes coming that we've got that plans for. It won't be the pet stuff won't be in this next patch, but we're kind of making design decisions and things around that in order to aim to releasing that soon too.
I gotcha.
And I think that'll add some other interesting benefits that people are looking for that aren't directly related to your chances of being successful in an adventure.
Okay, I gotcha.
It'll make more sense later on once it's
Sure.
released.
Once more info comes out,
Yeah.
no, I get it. I get it. I get where you're coming from. I think I think this might be a good time to switch rather than talking about blockchain items. Talking a little bit about virtual items in the game or gold specifically. One of the questions or one of the things that I was one of the first things I was looking for, obviously, right before I got married, when I needed to take a little time off, and then with tax season, one of the first things I did when I came back was I was looking at, what happened? What happened to the virtual economy in the game? Right? What happened with gold? What happened with pendant prices? Things along those lines. And I was surprised. I was gonna guess that everything would have increased significantly more than what it had shown to me on the Emporium. My thoughts here was just that, hey, gold is always being made as people are running dungeons. In terms of sinks for gold, really, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only sink is really like like the teleport scrolls right now. But then again, if a lot of people are needing to use teleport scrolls, like that's a good, or creating potions too with the bottles. Those could be good sinks for gold. What are your thoughts about just in general, like gold inflation, where it's at right now, or what you think, what you would desire to happen in the future? Obviously players in control of it, sharing gold back and forth, but what are your general thoughts on gold inflation?
I haven't been looking at it too closely recently. It's just kind of been running itself. A lot of the gold is getting distributed around among players anyway. I've checked the economy and how much everyone has and that kind of thing. And there's a handful of millionaires out there.
You know who you are.
But but I mean it's not out of control. It's not like people have billions and billions or they've found a gold duplication bug or anything like that. So that's always a good test to make sure everything's working well and is stable. Um, we did have some gold sinks that were pegged to blockchain items, but it's not a good idea to mix the two economies
Mm.
like that. And there's also that whole thing of I've got to be careful that I'm not allowing people to um, pay for blockchain items with fiat because they end up being like a an exchange then. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
why
Red
there's this
tape and things along
disconnect.
those lines. Hmm.
Well, yeah, it's like you suddenly have to get hit by laws where I have to ask for full KYC and there's AML laws and like it's just I'm not
Another
doing
level of
not doing
complication.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got you.
So until regulation comes along in any kind of form or there's some um, further transparency around how that's all supposed to work and can work, especially for businesses and stuff, just keeping them all separate.
I got you.
Um,
I mean, you kind of got a.
yeah.
I'm assuming you got a little bit of taste of that when it came to like just implementing credit cards in general. So no, I get where you're coming from there. There's also the idea of players obviously coming in and out of the game, and I'm sure there's a lot of players that, they step away. There is some gold that's there, that's in their account, but technically inactive. So since it's not circulating, that in itself kind of serves as a form of keeping gold from running, too crazy there. I'm
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of control, so there's no need to go crazy and try and fix anything.
mhm.
Um, it's circulating a lot. There's lots of trading going on the marketplace, not only in blockchain, but obviously in the gold economy too. But there'll be more things coming.
Okay, cool.
So what I mean, everyone jumps in the game and says, this is missing, this is missing, this is missing, doesn't do this, whatever. It's like again the layers. I'm just trying to add things that are compatible with each other in order to get to another destination. So
How
I
many
don't see
layers
anything
do you
wrong.
see ahead? Like, how many layers
Oh,
do you plan ahead
I don't know.
or build
You
ahead?
guys keep coming up with new things. You're like, oh, can you add this? Can you add this? Can you do that? Can you add that? Can we do
Yeah.
this? I'm like, well, the onion just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
I don't know.
Um,
I mean, I kind of just see this as an evolving thing. Like, there doesn't have to be an end, does
mhm.
there? Like, there's games like RuneScape that just keep adding things and adding things and adding things. Like, that's the kind of the way that I see it. As long as it's supporting everyone, everyone's enjoying themselves and having fun. There'll be some people making money from it because that's the new thing these days. So, like, that's great. Like, as long as it keeps continuing, it's better than like pumping something up and then having the entire thing crash and everything ends. Like, we're not doing that. That's
Exactly.
that's not happening. So.
I think also, I mean, I think you mentioned it in the previous interview you did with Caleb over there with Engine about how like Fortnite, for example, like there's generations of players and different events that happen over the course of time. It's an ongoing, game, I guess, game as a service. And there's different points in time when you unlocked items that kind of are a marker of where you were or when you participated or what you did. And if the game continues, there's an inherent value in that, right? Of being able to say, like, in the history of this game, I was present for X or Y, And I agree completely when you say about the idea about it just continuing forward, not necessarily with an end. I think that's a big trend. We saw Sony recently acquire Bungie because that's the expertise they have, right? Like, video games are going that route. Another item that I hear a lot being discussed, I guess, inside of crypto gaming, is this idea of when it comes to bringing in new players to the space, non-crypto players. Obviously, wanting to make it easy to onboard as much as possible. The less friction, the better. But there's also a lot of talk about games wanting to only focus on blockchain items being cosmetic and not being gameplay related. I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, I could see a world where both ideas exist. I'm just kind of shocked that, like, I'm not shocked. There's a very big line in the sand. Is that just because of the fear with like pay to win? Is that's what it all comes back
Yeah,
to?
it seems to, yeah. So from what I've gathered, people are very like quick to say that something is pay to win, and the definition of pay to win is so broad and generic now. Like the true definition is just simply you're paying some money and suddenly you jump up to the top of the leaderboard and you won and you win a prize or something like that. So you paid to win something.
Mm-hmm.
People have done it now so that a game is pay to win if you can buy something on the website, if you can pay a subscription fee. If you literally trade money for something, anything, doesn't matter what it is, they call it pay to win. So the whole argument is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't follow that anymore. People just don't know what they're talking about. They're just crying and complaining about stuff that they believe should be free.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm right there
you
with
know,
you.
you can't have everything for free. Like, if I'm giving away everything for free, I'm paying to create all that stuff. I'm putting all the time and effort in it. I can't pay a team
Mm-hmm.
with free. Um, yeah, it doesn't work. That's not how an economy works. The crazy thing
Mm-hmm.
is you can earn items and you can resell those items. So you're already gaining an income. The money is circulating. And then you still have those same people complain that they must pay for something else. So they're already getting money. They're now earning an income, which they weren't doing before. And then they still complain
Yeah, it's
that
more,
something is
more, more,
pay to
more.
win or whatever. Yeah, yeah. It's like, what? Just participate in the economy. Like, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong anymore with buying a sword from another player and then you can then resell it in the future. Like, you're not buying it from a developer. You're not buying a Fortnite skin from the developer and then that's it. Like, I've got like hundreds of dollars of Fortnite skins sitting on my account. Can't resell them. There's nothing I can do with that. So I just stopped playing and then that's it. Like, I just paid for the entertainment, I paid for the enjoyment of having those skins and that's it. But already now with blockchain, you can resell and get that value out of it. So you shouldn't be so fearful about spending money. And I think that's the thing. They're so fearful about spending money on games because in the past, you didn't get anything for it, or maybe the item was taken away from you, and revoked, or whatever. Like, I think there's just that fear thing of spending any kind of money in a game
Hmm.
that seems to be now uh, coming across in the blockchain space, and them not making the connection there that will hold on. You can actually earn an income and you can resell items. Like, it's not like the old one was. And this whole pay to win concept, which was originally buying something from the developer in order to come first in something, like, how does that work? If you're going to say that's pay to win, you can say buying something in the real world is pay to win.
Right.
Like, you want a specific car. Oh, that's pay to win. Like, okay, so literally life is pay to win. Yes. Basically what you're calling pay to win is a consumer market, or is the entire
Hmm.
um, way the world
That's
works.
the
Like,
financial system. Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah.
So then let's play around, I guess, with the idea that that fear of pay to win's gone. It doesn't exist theoretically. Does that mean that games that are choosing to only, I mean, what does that mean for games that choose to only do cosmetics or versus like in-game items? Like,
Well,
do you,
they're making that decision based on that definition, aren't they? They're making the decision
right?
because they're so worried that players are going to criticize them for selling them something that will allow them to win at something. Um, but like, imagine the thing. Like, imagine they say there's a race on Sunday, any car can enter,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're going to go and buy like the best
The
car you
best
can
car that I can
afford.
get if I want to win, right? And then the game is like,
That's right.
is the reward worth the investment? You know, it's like it just comes down to risk management. You know,
But you buying that car or that vehicle or that weapon or whatever doesn't instantly guarantee that you're going to win. You might crash into a light pole.
exactly.
Someone else might cut you off. Any number of things. Like, it doesn't give you any kind of guarantee. So I think some of those developers are just missing the mark there. They're so worried, so apprehensive about not making it pay to win by this broad definition that isn't real, um, that they're just making cosmetics. And I mean, you're free to choose that, right? You can free to choose cosmetics so that you can't be called pay to win, but then your cosmetics don't really have a utility other than
Yeah, you
looking
lose.
good.
You lose. I mean, there's trade-offs. There's benefits.
Yeah.
There's benefits, and there's things that are going to hold you back. Um, you know, I think a lot of these ideas obviously spawned with the idea of free to play in general, and there, I mean, there seems to be, you know, when I look at the video game industry and I see how free to play took off, you know, and what they're structured, what the games are structured like today. I mean, obviously, a majority of them cater to whales because they're funding not only the development of the game, but also the ability for players that want to play for free to be able to to enjoy that content without having to pay. Right? There's always a cost. Right? You're not going to get to play a game for free. Like, that doesn't exist. Someone's paying for something, and it's the whales that are facilitating that happening. Um, if it if blockchain games really do start to take off, you know, I was listening to a podcast the other day with the new CEO of Polygon. I forgot Ryan. Oh man, I'm blanking. He was the CEO at YouTube Gaming. He just moved over. Fitz on Twitter. He was saying that one of the first things we might be able to see is we might see these same types of whales that are in free to play mobile games, like in the East, start to make the argument of, hey, I'm putting all this money in, just what you just said, but at least in these games I own something, you know. And if we start to see that transition happening, would that mean that we're going to get, like, the free to play model is here to stay, will continue to grow and grow bigger than we've ever seen before? Like, we've only seen the first iteration of what free to play can be.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in that. There's free to play as well as play to win or play to earn, or um, play and earn. Um, I mean, it can go in many directions. I guess the whole free to play thing, where it's weighted towards whales, was obviously the way that the development studios could provide a product that people would enjoy but still be able to pay the bills. they would get the money from the whales, and the whales are it's essentially like the whales paying for everyone else to play, because if they weren't doing that, the game wouldn't exist. They can't pay for the server costs, they can't pay the wages and all that kind of thing. The way I see it with, uh, if you want to call it Web3, or this whole space with blockchain support for that kind of thing, it almost allows communities and companies from as small as indie developers, from one person up to a large corporation, to create and sustain like a supportable or a supportive ecosystem for everyone in that system. So um, if you were to play WoW previously, you would pay them money and they would make things for you, and that was kind of it. You got to use your account, you got access to it, you might buy some cosmetics and a few other things, and that was kind of the limit of it. Some of these models that we're kind of allowing for now almost allow you to have a voice in where you want it to go, and so you can kind of vote on it. You can kind of have a more of a push into where you would like to see it go. It creates kind of like a close knit community as well, because I almost feel like when you pay for something, you're more vested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if someone turns up on your doorstep and gives you an Xbox, and you're like, "Oh, sweet, awesome, thanks," and then disappears, um, you'll be happy with that Xbox. But if you get a scratch on it or a scuff or something like that, you're probably, it doesn't matter too much.
I
Like,
didn't
it's not
pay
a big
for it,
deal.
right? Like, I didn't really
Exactly.
lose out,
So, unlike where you bought it yourself, you tend to take care of it more, because you know what went into that. You know what it cost and what you did in order to receive that money in order to buy it. So I kind of feel that when you're participating in an economy and you're buying and then selling things as well, that it's kind of just helping everyone in the entire ecosystem, as opposed to players just giving developers money for access to the service. And in those sort of situations, the only way for players to kind of vote is to stop paying.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. There's so much
Yeah,
in
so
in
much.
that space, and to unpack, that you could talk about and go and different directions and ways you can go. Um, Not everyone can do everything, and not everything mixes and matches well, and each has its pros and cons. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting time.
Oh yeah, and it's going to continue to be interesting, especially over the next couple of years. Um, transitioning, I guess, back onto Lost Relics, and when we talk about the idea of free to play, when we had a big spike in the gaming in the gamer population inside Lost Relics, there was obviously an attempt to slow that down, so that we can continue development over the course of time and make it as smooth as possible. Do you have like an idea or a like check the box like different levels of criteria that would make you feel more comfortable about when it is the right time to open that back up? Like, granted, you're still building, and there's a lot of things changing, especially in the near future. But do you have some type of like I would like X, Y, and Z things to actually be in existence before that even happens?
There's several ways to answer it, I guess. I mean, maybe I can answer it with another question
Sure.
and say, why do you want, and how many? Like, what are you expecting for it? Are you asking that because you are trying to resell your items and there's no one to resell it to? Are you asking that because you're bored and there's not enough people to talk to? Like, I mean, what is your motivation for wanting to
Yeah.
add
So
more people or whatever?
yeah, from a personal perspective, like what my motivation is more the idea of like wanting to see how the economy can progress. Like the reason why I'm in crypto gaming in general and all the different projects that I'm in is because like I'm fascinated about this idea of what economies look like in digital worlds, right? I'm like going through a lecture course right now where the main textbook is called the invisible hands of digital worlds, which is the idea of like how players, how people, how human beings interact in a virtual economy versus a real economy. Why do they make the decisions that they do? Why don't they? From my perspective, seeing that grow over time is the fascinating part. Like, I have no clue how any of this is going to play out, right? But like being there and watching it unfold before my eyes is like is the thing. But my guess would be for most players, at least the players that are inside Lost Relics right now, I think it would be a combination of understanding that, hey, if player base increases, item value theoretically should go up. Also, if social interactions increase, theoretically the fun of the game would go up. These are all hypothetical, right? Because you could
Yeah, I mean,
onboard a whole bunch of toxic people, and it does the exact opposite. But
yeah.
I guess it just comes down to trying to get a picture of what the future could look like.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I mean, I have been artificially limiting the number of people coming in, obviously, just to preserve some of the way that the limited supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I've done some of these events, I have tried a few things with, creating pre-created supplies, and then more recently with the Christmas one to create liquid supplies. The liquid supplies I am really fond of for many reasons because it shows participation. You don't immediately at the start of it know how many of a certain item are there, but that's kind of
Yeah, I
cool
like
too
that.
because if they're dropping with the um, correct probability for a legendary item, then it kind of just scales according to how many people there are.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem before was that there's, a million people could come in, and then of the 100,000 items that are left, they'll disappear because people are just rolling so often and so fast that it'll be gone, and then everyone who's now left complains. So it might have given 1 week of joy, and now suddenly there's a million people complaining that they're not getting any items. So that doesn't sort of make any sense. Having more of a liquid thing is an idea. So that was the test we did at Christmas. Um, and the only other thing that I've sort of thought about is doing it more as blockchain items are given as more rewards or at the end of puzzles or quests or other things, but not for everyone. So if you are participating and you happen to read a riddle in maybe the tavern, and then you follow through and figure that out and manage to find whatever it's talking about, then maybe you'll get one of the 100 blockchain items.
Oh man, I'm so afraid of what that's gonna do to me because I mean, first off, I love riddles, but I literally spent I don't know how many hours looking at the clock in the tavern because it gives you a text page and like oh my god, okay, but yeah, no, that's
That's
really
why
cool
I've
though.
purposely said that stuff is coming. It's not available yet. I will say when it's available because I don't want people wasting their time, and I just want them to get excited about it.
Yeah.
So I feel that that would be a better way to drop a lot of the more valuable blockchain items, or even if you were to say blockchain items are the valuable items and virtual items are not as much. um, you could almost see it that the virtual items are the ones that are dropped more. So as you're playing Dungeons and Adventures, that's the kind of items you'll be getting. But if you're also then doing these other activities, or maybe solving puzzles or whatever it happens to be, that's how you then get blockchain items. So that if there was a million people that came in, all it would do is to drop more virtual items, which are unlimited, the majority of them. And that would then scale with the player base. And then if those people disappeared, then they wouldn't be sold in the marketplaces or anything anymore, right? So that whole system controls itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the blockchain items are there for people who are treasure hunters.
Yeah, yeah, you're giving me the Ready Player One vibes and everything, so that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah, I actually watched that again the other day, and I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, holy crap! Like I'd done some of that stuff
yeah,
in Lost
exactly.
Relics already. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize. I wasn't thinking about it, but there's some parallels there. It's not like I was watching the movie, making notes, and then creating Lost Relics. Like it's kind of just been um, naturally going that way, I
Yeah,
guess. And it was
yeah,
interesting to watch it the other day and go, oh, holy crap!
like,
Now people are probably
yeah,
gonna just say I'm just copying it or whatever, but yeah, it didn't sort of click until the other day when I did see it again.
yeah. That's
Um, but I mean, I have kind of gone a roundabout way of doing it because originally I was just dropping like every item in the game was blockchain items, right? And I just because they're all limited, I needed something else to pad it out. So virtual items was the the other choice, as opposed to just creating thousands and thousands more blockchain items. So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of what I've been thinking about for that, and that as maybe we go towards that direction, um, it would allow me to just remove the limits again,
Yeah. I mean,
because it doesn't remove the blockchain items just by rolling adventures.
yeah. Looking back about the idea of these liquid blockchain items, depending on how many players are participating at certain points in time, really cool idea. I've always liked the way that you did the virtual holiday items, where it's like, hey, these are virtual, which means you can lose them, which means over the course of the year they become more scarce. There's more, especially for some of the ones that are really powerful. It's like you don't want to lose those, like that. There's so much importance behind your runs now. It gives you that feeling of. I mean, obviously, there's some really big losses.
Downsides.
There's some downsides. But without the downsides, you can't have the big upsides.
Yeah, I mean, some of that might actually, like Corey's been championing to add some sort of an ability that allows you to secure your most valuable virtual item instead.
Oh,
So
man.
when you die, then you kind of, it keeps your most valuable one alive. Doesn't remove it from you.
It's just crazy because I was talking with a group of people on like a stream like 3-4 days ago, and I was like, because I was just nerding out about economy stuff, and I was just like, hey guys, one of like the important pillars of any capitalistic economy is insurance. Like, it exists because it lets people take more risks than they previously done. And I'm not saying that this is insurance, but like the idea is kind of the same, right? It is that like, hey, if something bad happens, you can, be a little bit more safe than normal, which means people are more likely to take risk. And that ups the stakes for a player to feel when they're playing, which I think is really cool.
I mean, without any thought into anything at all, and just simply riffing off the idea, you could pay insurance for your runs and be like, I really don't want to. I want to use this item because it's really good. If I lose it, or I'm worried about losing it, maybe I'll pay some extra gold in order to secure it so that I don't lose it when I die. That's like an interesting idea. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, I got you.
It kind of, the thing about that is, like, if you don't have any way to lose items, you don't have these opportunities to do those kind of things anyway.
Right.
And the other part of it that you could do is, we've talked about having player land and player housing and that kind of stuff. There's going to be ways that come with that allow you to generate a passive income, or maybe provide things for other players to do. Maybe one of those could be items that are lost on adventures are randomly put onto someone's land for someone else to find. And so not only is the treasure hunt in the dungeons going on, but maybe from any lost virtual items, they might appear on people's land, and you can like pay them to go digging on their land to maybe have a chance to find some of those lost virtual items. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can implement
there's
it.
Stuff you can do that sort of stuff. Like, it's pretty
exactly.
cool.
Yeah, I think that is really cool. I think again, going back, playing with the idea of like insurance, economy related items. Like, the thing that's been on my mind that I just can't get out, doesn't matter if it's Lost Relics or any other crypto project or game, is the idea of like, how do you incentivize people to keep the machine going, right? Because like the idea is here about even the idea about passive income. Doesn't matter what game you're talking about or what project you're talking about. That can't exist on its own. Sooner or later, it runs out, which means it needs to be refilled, right? One way or another. Out of everything that I've seen you create so far, that fascinates me the most, like from that standpoint, the blockchain emporium, the in-game marketplace, I think is the key thing that you developed recently that as time progresses, as years go on, can have the most impact on the game. Like, whether it is like that is the key right now that is facilitating the treasury going on. If things like that, riffing off of the insurance idea or riffing off of land or whatnot, if all of those are somehow connected one way or another, the system has multiple ways to perpetuate itself, to continue. We talked a little bit on the last stream about, hey, what happens if Lost Relics becomes a validator node? Maybe there's a way that can help facilitate the entire economy along with obviously development of the game, right? Those are the things that have been playing in my mind. I believe the Efinity white paper has a little bit of discussions about what renting, lending, and what these in other words, they're taking the ideas of renting and lending, these other different parts of the economy, and kind of building a little bit with that in mind, about that becoming a thing. But that, in essence, is kind of outside of Lost Relics, right?
Yeah.
If there's
And
a
you don't
way,
necessarily want to allow that for every game either. So hopefully they don't force that onto everyone, because that could potentially destroy the economies for some games.
that's a good point. That's a very good point. The path I was going down, that I'm going to have to think a lot more about what you just said there, because that's extremely important.
Well, yeah. Imagine if you'd built the economy around players finding these items and recycling them, and as soon as they can rent them, like everything goes out the window, right? If you're relying on some specific mechanic there, then yeah, it kind of causes you
that
issues.
changes a lot of things. I mean, it's even the idea of renting. The idea is that it's supposed to be returned. That item is supposed to be returned to the original player, right? So, I mean, there could be problems where, like, hey, what happens if the player that borrowed it turned it in, and now there's nothing to return, or whatever, But
Yeah,
it's all
exactly.
it's all speculation, right? But do you think that some of those features would better be served being inside Lost Relics, or just maybe not inside Lost Relics, but just have a way to touch the Lost Relics economy?
Yeah, it's coming. So we've been promised renting for is it 3 years now? I'm pretty sure since I first released the first item, people are like, "Can I rent this out? When can we rent this out?" I was like, "Yeah, Engine's got that feature coming. They've said it's coming soon. It's coming soon." Um,
Do you see a way where if Engine does that, it can still benefit the Lost Relics treasury?
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it.
Okay.
So it depends on how much freedom or how many advanced features or properties that they give it, because obviously I can do much deeper integrations with the game if it's within the game. So if I have renting, I can ensure that I've marked this item to say that it's rented. It can't be traded for anything. Like, I might rent your sword and then I'll go and resell it on the marketplace.
Right.
Like that's
Like
an entirely feasible thing to happen on the Engine side.
literally
I
shorting.
don't know. Yeah, and then you've lost your item too.
Exactly.
So within the game, I can put different kind of checks on that. So I would remove the item from standard player accounts and standard use, and only allow it to be used for its utility, i.e., maybe it's a sword and I'm allowing them to attack monsters with it. But they wouldn't be allowed to trade that in or turn it in for a quest reward or something.
Right.
So I mean, I've been doing a lot of thinking about that, and discussing with Corey again as well about how we should do that so that we don't wreck the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a couple of ideas around that. So we're looking at having that come around the same time as player housing.
Cool. The other item, really quick, when we're talking about treasury, about the pool of shadow stones, I guess you can say, that is being rewarded to players for participating. Well, I guess it's a two-part question, right? As Efinity and as Engine progress into the future, and Lost Relics' choice to stay within these platforms, it seems to me that the importance of having a significant amount or a balance of both Engine and EFI token for Lost Relics in particular is going to be extremely important, right? Whether we're talking about Engine with a validator node, or whether we're talking about EFI with the idea of the fuel tank system, which I don't know how that's really going to play out, but obviously, the idea here is that there's going to need to be pools of these things that help facilitate this progression inside engine with it to get all the utility that engine's providing out. These are the ways that you do it. Is that something that you've considered players being able to help build out, whether it's staking or whether it's lending, lending shadow stones, or I guess my whole point is that if players are able to help accomplish those goals for Lost Relics, and a validator node gets created, or a fuel tank gets funded, that's benefits for everybody that's in Lost Relics. Have you given any thought about how players might be able to help with that, or is that something you think is more developer mindset?
A little bit. I've kind of I don't know the full details as well. Like there's some missing information in the white paper, especially the technical details around how it's going to work. Mm-hmm. I've been accumulating both engine and EFI because in order to do anything on Efinity, you need EFI. To send an item, you need to spend EFI. Mm-hmm. And engine is used in a unique way in that you can use your engine to vote for that validator, and the validator doing the transactions then gets a cut of the EFI. Mm-hmm. So really you want your players to also have engine in order to vote for that. I don't know if it's going to be just engine coin or whether it's going to include items with engine backing as well. So maybe if you had all your items, all your Lost Relics items with their backing values, maybe you can vote with that. Not 100% sure on that. I believe as part of the voting, for the validator, like if we set up a Lost Relics validator, I should be able to see who is voting for it and provide some sort of benefit for that. So if we're saying, oh, if you vote for me and I'm getting EFI, then I can use a percentage of that EFI to fill gas stations, and you'll get access to that. So the way the gas stations work is if you're sending an item to someone else, you have to pay EFI. But if you have got a lease on that gas station, then some of the transaction fee will be paid for by that gas station. So it kind of creates almost like a way for the engine to power the EFI stuff. I don't know how it's going to play out because if either enough people don't have engine, then I don't know how the validators will be able to obtain enough EFI to be able to credit their players or not. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's a few unknowns that are going to happen there. I haven't looked at any kind of insurance or any kind of lending or anything like that at all yet. Again, it really depends on where it's going to go. I don't want to start planning for features on Efinity and then it gets released and
not even possible.
It doesn't work. Yeah. Or maybe it's like, oh, this ecosystem is no good anymore. Everyone's disappeared, and there was some new blockchain that was released a day ago, and everyone's flocked to that, and now that's the new number one. That's the new Ethereum or whatever. So I don't know. There's so many unknowns.
I gotcha.
That I just don't. I don't know. It's like at the start, all there was Ethereum, so that's what we went with.
I gotcha. So
now there's so many options.
So I don't know which one's good. We've been running for about an hour here, right? And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would like to hit one more item for a quick convo, and then maybe a couple quick fire little things. So something that I read recently that just kind of started to fascinate me, and this is all theoretical and whatnot, but I've been reading a lot about the idea of DeFi and interacting with gaming. There's been some papers written that are kind of making me rethink how some of these systems could work. Specifically, there's one idea about the idea of no loss tournaments is what they're calling it. They're calling it a no loss tournament. So let's say you're playing a shooter. And in order to participate in the tournament, in the battle royale, you have to stake 100 engine. Okay. For however long the tournament's running, All the participants' engine is put into a DeFi contract that's earning interest. The tournament takes place over the course of a month. At the end of the tournament, the winners are the top three are the ones that are rewarded with the interest that pool created, and everybody else's entry fee is returned. So the idea of like theoretically no one loses, but the winners do get all the interest. I thought it was a fascinating concept, and not related to Lost Relics in general, but just putting that out to you as like, you know, off the cuff. What are your first thoughts when something like that comes? When I bring up that type of idea, not it doesn't need to be Lost Relics related.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I guess a thing I'd have to ask though is like depends really on what the interest rate is. Like
Yeah.
if you only get $1, $2, $3 worth or something like that, then you're not going to participate in that again, and the whole thing will just stop. It really depends on what is generating the interest.
Right.
So if you're staking the engine coins or putting the engine coins there, right? Who is providing the interest for that in this wallet? Like there needs to be a mechanism in place already where holding a large amount of engine increases the amount that you get
Yeah.
from the system or something, whether you're a validator node or something else. You're not
Right.
going to get it for free. So whatever that is, it just needs to be enough interest generated to be able to pay out the prize money, because otherwise everyone's just going to get the $100 back or the 100 engine back, whatever you said.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I thought as well. The thing that I was reading was about the idea of these being tournaments that were sponsored by like Coinbase or FTX or Aave, kind of like the way that the World Series is sponsored by MasterCard, or the NBA Finals or are sponsored by some type of financial organization, things along those lines. Whether maybe Swissborg, right? I mean, we already did something. We already did an event, along those lines. But I just thought it was a fascinating thing. I wanted to put that out there and get your quick response on it.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to do it with, say, like, don't think about engine, but think about Polkadot. So if you were to say, do it with Dot, and you required 2,000 Dot or something for your entry or whatever it happens to be, then you could, and you were saying that the tournament was lasting for a month, then you could stake it for a month. Like you can do that right now, right, with Binance. So I think you can, you're limited to like 5,000 Dot per account. So you can stake up to that amount. I'm not sure what it is on chain. But you could imagine that if you had a high enough interest rate, like I don't even know that 10% is really going to do 10% per annum. That's only going to be just a couple of hundred. So I'm not sure if it's worth it. You'd need to have something that gives kind of a big payback. Otherwise, what you were talking about there with sponsorship deals, it's not really staking. It's just, yeah, I'm not sure.
Advertising, I guess it's an advertising fund, I would assume, or something along those lines.
But then why even have the entry fee? Like if you have an entry fee that just simply gets returned back to you, and there was going to be sponsors anyway, then it seems like why even have the entry fee?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it's a play on trying to do it more decentralized than rather centralized, but yeah, I mean, very good point.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it if it was like you could stake some tokens or something, and then you also had to use your skill to try and win, and if you won, you got whatever the interest was made on that, and everyone got back their stuff. It sounds like a cool idea. You would just have to have a really good amount of interest in order to make it beneficial for the winners to even do that in the first place, because then everyone else, first, second, and third, gets something, but then everyone else gets nothing. So they staked that thing for a month and got nothing.
I guess they got the entertainment in return, right? Of being able to participate in the tournament that other people weren't.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It really depends on what other things are out there for that kind of a token that they have, or whether there's something better that they can personally invest in instead of like that thing. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing for sure. We probably have to just figure out some details around that, and probably someone's going to figure out something soon.
For sure. So. Well, let's jump over, I guess, real quick to some ideas here, some more short little questions. We don't need to go into many big conversations on them really fast. But so these are a few questions that were proposed by just from the in-game chat from Lost Relics. So we're just going to shoot them at you. What are the thoughts of, or what are the likelihood that we would get something like mini games within the game? Things like poker or slots or shells or little mini games that can be played amongst players.
That's things that I've thought about. I just wasn't sure whether there'd be any kind of demand for it.
Okay, I gotcha. Actually, I was a little surprised about how often that got brought up. To tell you the truth, apparently a lot of
Yeah.
people are like they're really into the idea of the tavern becoming more of a social engagement or having more social engagement. And I think what happened was when you mentioned the comment about buying around for everybody, I think it just spawned from there, but I don't know. Um, Next one for
Is it
you.
particularly that people want to do competitive games where they're betting on things? Is that what it is? Like
Um,
it's a gambling thing, or is it just being able to play games together, like tic-tac-toe or something?
I got the impression that it was games together, but they're definitely some people definitely throw out the ideas of like slots for gold or whatever. Um,
Like,
yeah, but I got the more of like what are different little time sinks that we could do vibe. What are your thoughts between the differences between mini bosses and final bosses for Lost Relics?
as in, you want to know the differences between them?
More as in, do you have plans for one versus the other? Do you
Oh,
think? Do you think? Do you think that like what we're seeing right now is an iteration that you might evolve on, or things like that?
I mean, I call them mini bosses. I think that's why people are calling them that.
Mhm.
They're definitely not like the final bosses or the bosses that I have planned. Those will require considerable effort and health and that kind of thing. So they're more like bosses that you would find in, um, yeah, any other action game um, that are challenging with a long, big progress bar and that kind of thing.
Big
So if you
finales.
remember, yeah, you remember Ogandor?
I
So
missed
he's an
it.
example.
I wasn't.
Oh,
I
okay.
missed it just by a little bit. I wish I was there, but I've seen the YouTube video.
So he's an example of like a boss, but a very basic and early one. So it would be like that, yes, where you would have a random chance at the end of an adventure, maybe, or maybe midway, I don't know, to encounter such a boss. So you need to always be prepared. You don't necessarily know whether you're going to encounter them, but you know roughly where they would be spawning or appearing. Um, and then sometimes there might also be specific locations you go, such as maybe there is a gateway that definitely leads to battling Ogandor, and so you would take in everything you need for that, and maybe have to do a little bit of a fight through monsters and that kind of thing to reach him at the end. But he's guaranteed to be there. So there's yeah that kind of thing, and it's definitely different and separate to the mini bosses that you sort of see at the moment.
Very cool. Another one from the community. What are your ideas about further progression on gathering skills? Things like a mythical node or a transcendent node, or things like switching out, having different items be gatherable than what are currently gatherable.
What do you mean by the latter?
Um, More like maybe new items are created into the game, and now there was never something that could be gathered at level 23, but now there is, whatever this new thing is.
Sure. As I've said with many things, a lot of that stuff is first pass, and it'll be filled out as we go. The cap on the legendaries is just there right now because there was so much content to create for that. There was so many new items and so many levels and all that kind of thing. So that's the cap at the moment. It's not to say it's not going to be raised in the future to add a few other things. I don't know if we'll get to transcend it or not. It does seem kind of weird that you can mine. I mean, the transcendent was kind of reserved for these items that were created, millennia ago. So for me, it seems a bit odd to have a way to create them yourself or have a way to um, like almost mine them or gather them from a rock or something like that. I don't know.
Gotcha.
In saying that, I don't know. We might change that. I'll probably end up discussing that with Corey. I know he's got some plans for where we want to go with the gathering skills. And it's the same with production. The skills that you have at the moment are not necessarily the last. Like you can see in the recent update, we added forging,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so new things will get added over time. Yeah.
I got you. I got you. Actually, that was just the idea that you just said right now about like transcendent items being millennia old. I mean, that makes sense when I think about the lore, but I don't know why I hadn't thought like that before when I was reading them. So that's cool.
I think it just becomes a rarity in your head, right? You don't necessarily have that attachment to it. It's just me that when I created those things, and all of the rarities, even though that some of the rare things, I imagine that they were all pre-created. So even adding the ability for you to create items seemed a bit weird. Like, 'cause should you have the ability to create a mythical item, like a mythical sword yourself? If you're going by the law, then no. But I mean,
You
it's
know,
changed so much since then anyway.
I think it's
The game
fascinating
is
just to see
morphed.
how you think. Like, I think that's kind of cool. Like when Cliff was sitting down at the drawing table, like what was he thinking when he drew up the idea of a transcendent? Like, I think that's pretty cool. Last
Yeah,
one
I mean,
for you. I'll go for it.
just quickly though, but people have been asking, things like having ways to modify those weapons as well. Like, should you really be modifying such a valuable item
Yeah,
anyway? Like, but yeah, I mean, it's a game. Who cares? Like, it just, that sort of stuff ends up changing.
exactly.
So it's probably going to change soon.
Last one on the I'm blanking. What's the name of it? The friends list. Will friends be able to communicate with each other?
Yeah, you can private message each other.
Nice, nice. Any thoughts on guilds? I'll leave it at there. That's the last one. Do you have any thoughts willing to talk about the idea of guilds?
What is your definition of a guild, and how would you see that in Lost Relics?
Um, See, this one's the hard one, right? Because we have the traditional guilds, I would say, in like World of Warcraft, in RuneScape, in we have that traditional idea, which is just a group of players that are operating or cooperating together for certain goals. It can be to be producers or dungeon slayers or help each other level up or whatever.
Yep.
Now, with this new Web3 definition of guilds, or at least what they're trying to do, I'm kind of confused by it, to tell you the truth. I get the idea of like, hey, these are valuable NFTs, and if we work together, we can all go get them, right? But for what end? Like, I just don't. I don't.
Yeah, and is it pooling them together? Like, if one of your members finds a transcendent and no one else finds one, what happens?
Well, that
Does
was
that cause a rift enough for people to break it up? What about if, like, you found a transcendent and you were renting it to the rest of the group? Someone else was able to use it, right? But in the meantime, while they were in the middle of an adventure, you sold it. What should happen? Does it immediately just disappear from their hands and they're in the mid dungeon and they've suddenly got no item? Like, you couldn't really get rid of some of those items in those games where you had guilds with that kind of sharing mechanic either. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that is. It could also be guilds could just be loosely done. For example, if land and buildings and things like that cost quite a bit of money, or maybe there's an upkeep fee or something like that. Maybe several people could band together and agree to pay the taxes on the land, or do something in order to get some other reward. Like, maybe the reward is that the land generates something over time and everyone gets an equal split of that. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like a loosely linked guild kind of thing. I don't know whether you'd need to formally call yourselves a specific name and have a badge and that kind of thing, like a lot of them do. You probably want to have your own chat area so you can just chat amongst all your guild members or something like that. What is the limit of those kind of things? You can't just have infinite on that collaboration stuff. Like, if you're only allowed 16 players because of limitations, who do you then include in your guild? And what happens if you've got 17 players? And that, like, there's just so many unknowns
There
to
is a
that
lot.
stuff.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot.
And so many questions, I guess.
I mean,
So
to be honest with you, I was listening to Non-Dairy's video on demand on Twitch, where I think he spent like, I don't even know how many hours talking about like what happens if we all go on a raid and we find a transcendent. Like, who gets it? Do we sell it? Do we split it? Do we agree beforehand? What like what if it's
To
public
be honest,
matchmaking?
yeah, for some of that's like any of the multiplayer side of things. The way I would see it is like I know I played WoW before, where you go on to an adventure and then someone you find loot and you're 16 members or something, and everyone's like, "Oh, roll for greed or need or
Need,
something like
right?
that." I feel like that just adds a massive contention in the whole thing, when really what should have happened is the system just rolled it for a specific player, because it takes away all of that stuff and it's just again down to RNG. And of course, if you're in the group with someone and someone keeps getting the same item, it's going to feel like, oh, it's rigged, it's favoring them or something like that. But it's not, it's just RNG, and it's the same thing could happen with the rolls and stuff. It just removes that kind of a mechanic and puts it back into the system.
It's
I don't,
fascinating that
I
you
don't,
say that because literally one of the chapters in the book I'm going through is about, I think it's in EverQuest, which I didn't play. But so if anyone here has played and this is the wrong game I'm talking about, correct me. But it was the idea of in economics about a guild created this idea of what are called dragon kill points, which is just a way to tabulate. Hey, look, are you participating in the raids? Have you participated more than others? If you have, you get to accumulate these points that we created in the guild. This was before cryptocurrency, which could easily be done now. The idea of NFTs and everything. Like, hey, you acquire all these things participating for the guild. If somebody in the guild hits this, you can choose to spend your guild points to get it. And now,
oh yeah,
hey, it's all based on participation, and it was a system that was created in a game outside of the developer's intentions, but for a while facilitated peaceful trade because people were like,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean
that's fair.
that is fair. I mean, um, yeah, I could think like you need a proper way to track their participation, obviously, and if the game did it for them or something. Um, how do kills count? If everything can be one hit killed, then it doesn't matter too much because you can directly credit to the player. But then if it's a boss, you need to like count a certain amount of how much damage each one does. Does that really work that well if you've got healers who are just staying back and not killing things? So you need to make sure that you're also then counting healing.
Mhm.
How do the heal points directly account? Could it be cheesed because someone could just sit there and just let a mob hit them and then the
Yeah.
healer just keeps healing them up? Like,
The
I
biggest
mean,
complaint on it,
it,
my bad. The
yeah,
biggest complaint on it was the idea of like freeloading. Like, what happens
yeah,
if you have 10 level 100 players and one level 30? Like, they still gained a participation point from being there, but did they really help? And that's
yeah.
where things got into like they started making new systems to counteract those systems. It's just fascinating stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good way to credit them. You just need some way to be able to correctly rate them. Like if they were just simply there, like you said, at the end of the adventure, and you happen to win it and you got a point, you could just sit back and do nothing and you'd still get a point. So really, you need a better way to measure that. But even the better way to measure it is, well, you have to take in account difficulty. Is it really difficult to attack something? So you should get more points for doing the same, like for doing an attack, a single attack, than say healing someone, because it's pretty easy to just hit the button to heal them. Like you could just go nuts with that stuff. That just seems too complicated. Um, so simply taking it back to randomness, which is in everything, seems like a fair way to do it, even though people who are directly involved with it might not feel that way. It's like right now, people saying, "Oh, I never get any blockchain items. I never get any items."
I'm
And you look at
cursed.
Overseer, yeah, and it's like it's dropping a few like items are dropping every couple of minutes or something. And when there's more players, it's dropping every couple of seconds. So yeah, I don't know what the. I mean, it doesn't seem like there would be an ultimate solution for that. But surely, if there was something that we needed, we could investigate that and come up with something. And just don't want to make it too complicated.
For sure.
So yeah, I don't know.
Hey, Cliff.
Interesting thought though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, definitely. I'm barely like a quarter of the way through the book, so it's a page turner for sure. But hey, Cliff, I'm so grateful that you were able to have this little talk. I think we covered a lot of different issues, but you know how it's going to be. There's going to be even more questions that pop up or whatnot, from all the players. But I can just say, hey, I'm excited for what the future holds. Excited for the future updates. Any parting words or any parting ideas or things you wanted to bring up before we call it a day?
Um, I don't know. I know I need to do some sort of an update soon, on what's been going on and everything. And then this patch is obviously taking the longest. Everyone keeps asking about Easter event and that kind of thing. And
Oh yeah.
I mentioned briefly last time, um, that kind of rethinking that whole idea about doing the events at the same time as real world events and maybe just changing it to an in-game schedule instead. So, because I'm kind of running out of time for Easter this time, and there's been so many other changes, and prior to this, because there's been so many requests from people about multiplayer, I ended up starting to focus on that for this patch.
Cool.
So, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I mean,
it
look.
seems better to focus on that right now than to do another event. So, Easter keeps getting pushed back. Probably going to postpone it for this year and just do a different event instead, and maybe not tie it to each of the events.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's the impression that I got in, especially with the fact that this, if there was an Easter event, it would be the 2022 Easter, and then it's kind of like, hey, we're in a new year, all the old events happened. Now at least maybe 2022 is when these new events happen. Whatever they may be.
yeah, I mean the whole event system and everything, kind of means that everyone is just waiting for these events to happen, because there's not a lot for them to do in between, other than obviously going into the adventures. So another part of this patch is to, have more things to do all the time. So whether there's an event or not, it shouldn't matter. You'll still be playing because you're trying to achieve something else, or there'll be other goals to achieve that are going on outside the event. Um, and there'll always potentially be something to find in the game. So we
Are,
were talking about the puzzles or something. Maybe
Mhm.
there's always puzzles in the game to find, something that people are trying to figure out. So there's always something to do, as opposed to, 4 times a year where there's these events.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to move to that model so that it removes this whole thing where people are only playing for events or just specifically waiting for those, and that there's so much stuff to do in the interim that it doesn't matter, and you'll just be focusing on that, and then there'll just be an update that comes out.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I
that's
got you.
where that's where I'm kind of heading with this now, um, and especially because this update's taken so long because of all the changes, that are going into it, and some of the things that I've worked on are probably around 90% finished, but I'll hold back from this patch and then release within, the next patch. And the next patch is not going to take this long.
It's
Like
more like
the
tweaking in
goal,
between, and then
yeah, I mean, just finishing off. And so it should then maybe take a couple of weeks instead in order to release the next thing. And then the updates will become more rapid again.
I
Um,
got you.
it's just difficult doing some of these major changes and then releasing it like every couple of weeks. And the other side of it's happened too, where when I was releasing too often, people are then complaining, "Oh, there's too many updates. I'm constantly having to update." It's like I need to find the balance in there as well, where it's, frequent enough, but then there's also so much content that it doesn't really matter when it happens. It just the updates come and you're just like, "Oh, cool, another update. What else is new?" As opposed to not playing and waiting for an update.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, man. Hey, I think we had a good one here. Look forward to hopefully a future one. Once those updates and patches come out, we'll definitely be excited. I'll be excited to go through them. And oh man, you don't even know when it comes to the riddles how crazy you're about to drive me. But it'll be it'll be good. I love riddles, bro. I love riddles.
Oh,
But
cool. All right.
yeah, hey, thank you so much for coming on. I think we had a good one, and I think we'll just leave it at that right now for right now.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Take care, Cliff. Thanks.
Cheers.